Howdy, folks. It's about time I returned back to this channel and started doing some movies again. Life just kind of got in the way, so plus, there's been some other stuff, some good, some bad, come into play. But we are making a trek to the theater on this one. I kind of waited for the hype to die down a little bit, and plus money and issues. But today I'm going to check out the very popular biopic Michael. So yeah, I have heard some many good things from like audiences, but critics are not very pleased about it. So we're at a time in which the film critics and the audiences are completely divided in what is good or bad. So, and the audience is the ultimate critic. We're the ultimate critic because we're the ones that's paying the money to go see these films. Critics don't have to pay. They get their entertainment for free. We're the true movie critics because we pay to see these movies. And now you listen to them, they get all up in arms when we don't go to these movies. And even the actors and producers, directors and studios, they get all up in arms now because we're not going to it because we don't want it. But Michael, we wanted, apparently. So it's done pretty well at the box office. I myself have bought my ticket. I'm going to go check it out myself. So see you when I get out. Okay, so I'm back home after a long day. So Michael, starring Jafar Jackson, actual nephew of Michael Jackson, and embodying the persona of his own uncle. And of course was directed by Antoine Fuqua, who had directed films like Training Day and The Equalizer and films like that, and so has quite the reputation of being a decent director of films. And so Michael tells the story from the 1960s through the 70s till about 1988, 89-ish. And this story does have the rags to riches elements to it, but it's more the story that they wanted to tell, I think, was that Michael becoming independent. I think that's the proper word to describe is the heart of the story is about him becoming independent, becoming into his own, and discovering who he is as a person and as an artist, and escaping the clutches of his abusive father. Even when he was grown up and into the 80s, Joe Jackson was trying to control him, and there's a period in the film where Michael says, "You know what? We're done. I'm going to go off, do my own thing. My brothers are going to go off, do their own thing, and we're going to leave it at that, regardless of what Joe thinks." It doesn't say regardless of what Joe thinks, but basically does it in right in front of him. He says, "No, you're not going to tell me what to do anymore." Because Joe, you see the entire abusive side of Joe Jackson. That he was very controlling, whenever disciplining especially Michael, he whipped him with a belt. Now, we were all kids at one point, and I'm sure your parents had their own way of disciplining your child. Um, I'm not against spanking, but I am against beating a child, and you do not use a belt. Sorry. That's sorry, but not sorry. You don't do that. That's wrong. Uh, but the film does a good job at highlighting the important events in the career and life of Michael Jackson, especially at that time, going through, uh, growing up in the Jackson household in Terre Haute, not Terre Haute. Why am I thinking Terre Haute? In Gary, Indiana, completely opposite end of the state. In Gary, Indiana, and going through moving to California, you know, going through the Jackson 5, meeting Berry Gordy, through Motown, doing all the Jackson 5, and then leaving Motown and going to Epic Records, and creating the Off the Wall album, which was a successful record at the time, but also Off the Wall was not necessarily a pop record. It was considered to be a disco record. And you know, disco was very popular in the late 1970s, so 1978, 1979, Off the Wall debuted and did fairly well. And then a few years later, it's time to make the new record. He starts making Thriller, which would become the biggest selling record of all time. And it shows him going through all the writing process, working with Quincy Jones, and finally deciding on the title of what the album was going to be. And he realized it's Thriller. And then going into the shooting of the Thriller music video, which that sequence is pretty spot on. I mean, like, they just ripped it out of its element and put it on the big screen and just put Jafar's likeness, his version of Michael, on that image. And it was like, and they had somebody depicting John Landis, they had somebody depicting Rick Baker, producer, and matter of fact, they even shot it on the exact grounds where Thriller was filmed. So they just perfectly duplicated the shot. And it shows going through Thriller, Beat It, you know, and how at the time, why Thriller was such a big landmark thing is because at the time, MTV was struggling at playing black artists. They point that out, and of course Michael had made this short film. His music videos were not really music videos, they were short films. And you think about his most popular videos, you know, Thriller, Bad, Beat It, especially Bad and Thriller, they were directed by Hollywood directors. John Landis directed Thriller and Black or White, which was in the 90s. Martin Scorsese directed Bad. These were filmmakers, not music video directors. These were filmmakers. And he brought them into making the music videos. And then it goes into the late 80s when they were going to do, when Joe Jackson was like, we're keeping the family together and we're going to go on this world tour. Well, one of the brothers stepped out and was not going to be a part of it. And so it was no longer called the Jackson 5. They ended up having to change it to the Jacksons. And called it the Victory Tour. And they got Don King, the famous boxing promoter, Don King, to be the promoter of this tour. And, of course, they did some shows, but Michael ended it. And that's when he tells Joe Jackson that it's done. We're done with this. You're the one that's keep saying all this stuff, and it's very abusive mentally. You're the one saying all this stuff, and I'm grown independent of you. I'm no longer afraid of you. This is the way it's going to be. And so what did I think of the film? It's pretty good. I will say this. It is pretty good. It's not the best biopic I've ever seen. I don't think there's really been the best biopic. I think I would rank this one up there a little bit higher than I would say this one was better than Elvis. But I don't think it was as... It was better than the Elvis biopic that came out with Tom Hanks and Austin Butler playing Elvis. It was also... I would put this... Where would I put Michael? Maybe just below Walk the Line. I think, because I hold Walk the Line as one of the better, which was the Johnny Cash biopic. I put that one as one of the best biopics of all time in terms of music artists. Music artist biopics of all time. Yeah, I would say Walk the Line, Michael. I would also have to put in Coal Miner's Daughter in there too, which was Loretta Lynn, and then Ray, Ray Charles. Yeah, that's where I'd have to probably rank. It's not the best ranking of a musical biopic, but also what made Michael unique was, no, Michael was not around to tell this story, but his brothers were. His brothers are executive producers on this film. So the real problem that I have with this film is you have LaToya and you have the Jackson 5 brothers, but you're missing the oldest sibling, and you are missing Janet. She was not depicted in the film, and what I read, according to IMDb, she declined to be a part of it. And that is... But that's her right. She lived it. She didn't need to see it depicted on film. And that's just another thing I think that's unique about this film. It was very well told and very well put together. Forget what the critics said. It's a very good film. You know, like I said at the beginning, critics and the audiences right now are so divided, and they're so... The audience is the ultimate critic. And why I say that is because us, the audience, we pay the money to go to the movie theater. We pay for the streaming services or whatever, and we are the ones that hit the download. We go to the movie. We spend our money. We maybe even buy it on disc because we want to see that film. The critics don't have to pay that. Matter of fact, they get paid to go sit through them. While we lose money going to those things, they get money going to those things. But they are so out of touch with us, the audience, that why are we even listening to film critics now? So, thumbs up for Michael. It is a good film. So, let's go on to the next feature. Well, as much as I enjoyed Michael, I kind of discussed that with some of my friends of mine, and so they think Michael is one of the best musical biopics of all time, and I would say it's pretty good. Okay, and the reason why I'm bringing this back up for this next segment is because I made the comment in the previous segment that it's just as good as Walk the Line or just below it. That's of course on a different day. Yeah, I realize I'm wearing the same shirt, but this is a different day, different weekend actually. But anyway. I was busy during Memorial Day weekend, so I only got in Michael. So, but this is the following weekend. It's on a Sunday. I've actually got to hit the hay a little bit earlier, but for this weekend. But I think we'll make do. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I said it was just as good as Walk the Line, and this person said Walk the Line was a terrible movie, and no, it wasn't. I stand by that. This is my opinion that I'm giving to you. It's not based on any box office. I may pull out box office reviews, but for the most part, I'm giving my opinion on what I think. So far, Bohemian Rhapsody is actually, in terms of box office, Bohemian Rhapsody is the #1 biopic, and as luck would have it, Michael is from the same producer as Bohemian Rhapsody, so it was like a combination of the Jackson brothers, Anton Fuqua, who directed Training Day, he directed The Equalizer, and so now he comes with Michael, and they bring on Bohemian Rhapsody the Bohemian Rhapsody producer brought on everybody else. So. And I'm not taking any credit away from Bohemian Rhapsody because they did recreate Live Aid. So take that as you will. But now we're going to go into a different situation. This is a case in which a song was adapted into a feature-length film. This was not the first one to do this. I'm not quite sure what the first one was, but it seemed like in the 70s, like the late 70s, early 80s, it seemed like a bunch of these independent producers wanted to make these comedies with, it seemed like they wanted to make these comedies based on country music songs. And so, in this one in particular, we're going to go back to 1978. independently produced Harper Valley PTA, based on the Jenny C. Riley hit song written by Tom T. Hall, who was another country music singer. But this is the film adaptation of that song. So in this film we have Ronnie Cox and Barbara Eden from I Dream of Jeannie, as well as Susan Swift playing the role of the daughter. It was a huge hit song from back in the 70s, so they decided to stretch it out and turn it into this 102-minute adaptation for the cinema. So, once again, from 1978, Barbara Eden, Ronnie Cox, directed by Richard C. Bennett. Here is Harper Valley PTA. Okay, so that was Harper Valley PTA from 1978. It was an independently produced film. The company was called April Fools Productions that produced the film. According to what I read here, it was mostly sent to drive-ins, and it may have appeared in some indoor theaters and like things like that, but that was common back in the 1970s. They were making movies specifically for drive-ins and things like that. It's a PG rated film, and the story that takes place is that we have what's her name, the actress Barbara Eden playing Stella Johnson, and of course she's a bit out there in terms of a character. She's not a troublemaker, but she's definitely different. She's not exactly the proper and prim what is depicted of what a woman is supposed to be like in the town. So and so there's a letter that arrives. Susan Swift plays the daughter. What's her name? Dee Johnson. She's the 14-year-old daughter of Stella. And at the first 10 minutes of the film, they depict what happens in the song. How the daughter picks up the mail, goes in, and says, "Here, Mom, we got a letter from the Harper Valley PTA." And Dee Johnson, the daughter, she does have a look on her face like she is a little embarrassed by her mother. But then the mother, Stella, says, "Come with me, we're going to go confront the Harper Valley PTA." And just like in the song, this one's been drinking, this one's had several affairs, and so on and so forth. That's depicted in the Janine C. Riley classic country song. And matter of fact, they play the song in the film, like the first, as soon as the film opens up, they're playing the song, and they play it in its entirety. And so you see within the first 10 minutes them depicting the song, but the movie doesn't end there with the song. It goes on to be kind of this cartoony type of, it's not just Mrs. Johnson is not just confronting the Harper Valley PTA, she's out to embarrass them, and so much hijinks and dirty tricks and pranks that she pulls on them. That's it's rated PG, so it does get a little risque, but not to the point where anybody's offended, because probably the most offensive thing is the school teacher. The school teacher is having a fling with the mailman, and she, of course, takes a. There was no video cameras back then, so that she gets a Super 8 film camera, props it up in the window, and rolls the film, sends it off for development, gets it back, and just in time for the daughter to have to see the sex ed film that they always showed in the spring. And that's a common thing that they used to do. The boys went in one room and they watched their film, and the girls went into another room and they watched their film, and yeah, that was the thing. And like, so you see the girls go off to watch their film, and the mother has cut in certain shots of the teacher having her thing. But you don't see anything. There's no nudity. There's nothing like that. And you see each one of the Harper Valley PTA members kind of get their comeuppance, and yeah, it's just it was an outrageous comedy for the time. The song, what's the tagline? Yeah, the tagline they used was, the song was scandalous, the movie is hilarious. And that was their whole marketing campaign. And of course they take a quote from the song down at the bottom: "The day my mama sucked it to the Harper Valley PTA." And so it's definitely a film that's, you have to look past the it didn't age very well, so obviously there's things in it that's very, very of the 70s. Like I said, some of the pranks, like there was no video cameras, and so they had film cameras, motion picture film, like 8mm, or like Super 8 and things like that. Definitely where they could capture moving pictures. And there's no internet, and but it still has things in it that everybody goes through, and like because it's about the mother and the daughter, obviously, in this comedy, and you see the daughter going through being a 14-year-old girl and experiencing, hey, I'm having feelings for this boy and braces and all that stuff. And so that's a universal thing. That's timeless. But where it's, like I said, it does date a little bit definitely with the hairstyles and the type of tricks that they would do. Like I said, you wouldn't be using a Super 8 film camera to just see something. You would have a cell phone. Yeah, not even a camcorder, a cell phone. Yeah, so that's where we're at now, And you can hide these a whole lot easier than what you could a Super 8 film camera, that's for sure. But it's Ronnie Cox. I had to think where he was from. He played Jones in RoboCop. He was also the guy in Deliverance who played the dueling banjos on the guitar with the disabled kid on the banjo. And so he's in it playing obviously the love interest to Barbara Eden, and it's just a silly film because it's just a silly film. It turns into if you know the song, it does that, but also it turns into this kind of slapsticky cartoon type of movie where she definitely gets back at the Harper Valley PTA. So like, how dare you? You want to call me out for not being a proper mother, and I'm wearing my skirts way too high, which is in the song. And here you guys are. You are drinking. You're getting drunk. You're doing this. You're messing around on your spouses. You're doing this. You're doing that. And so I'm gonna expose you. And so, yeah, it's definitely, I would check it out. It's definitely a fun 70s drive-in romp. Yeah, because that's what I read about. It was mostly, where it was mostly successful, this film was in the drive-ins. And so, like, it had a budget of $1 million and it grossed $25 million. So it was a profit. So, you can find this. Check your local Walmart for $5. You can get it cheap. It's HBO Home Entertainment that put this out onto DVD. Like I said, it was an independent film, mostly I don't know if I would say it was a grindhouse film, but it was definitely a film that was made for a drive-in. I mean, I can see somebody like Roger Corman producing something like this at the time. You know, it's kind of in that same vernacular of film production. You know, cheap, and it was based on a popular idea at the time. Because this was not the only film that did this, especially with country music. This is how popular it got. A TV series in 1981, but it only aired for one season, and it had Barbara Eden reprising her role. Let's see here. I think, and well, I can't find anything, but definitely there was other films that were adapted from country music material. Definitely, another one was "Take This Job and Shove It," and I think that was an Avco Embassy release. It was either Avco Embassy or a AIP release. And there was also The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, which was popular by Vicki Lawrence. That was a hit single by Vicki Lawrence, and then was re-recorded in the 1990s by Reba McEntire, and she made a big hit out of that song. But there was a film adaptation of that song. But yeah, they did that for a while. There was like adaptations of popular songs and whatnot. And there's also a film. It was not an adaptation of a song, but it was music oriented. It had Meatloaf as the star, and it was around this time. A film called Roadie. It had Meatloaf, and there's cameos by, I think, Alice Cooper and Hank Williams Jr. and Roy Orbison, and because it was like a roadie doesn't just do rock music, or they also do country music. They do every artist, pop music and whatnot. But yeah, that was the Harper Valley PTA. So it can be found at Walmart for $5 on DVD. Don't think that there's any high definition transfers to it, but at least it's out on disc to where you can see it. It may even be on YouTube or something like that, where someone's bootlegged it. But yeah, so check it out, Harper Valley PTA. So let's go on to the next film. You ever wish that sometimes that you can just go back in time, like maybe to fix a simple mistake, or maybe go back to a simpler time? I think we all wish that we could do some of that. I've got hair in my eye for no reason. But yeah, you ever wonder that? Well, that's going to be the subject of this next portion of the video. The next film we're going to take a look at. From 1986, a little film starring Kathleen Turner, Nicolas Cage, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. It is Peggy Sue Got Married. Yeah, from 1986. We're going to take a look at this. I've never really sat through fully with this film, but I do know that I do know what the premise is about. And so in this film, you're also going to see a young Helen Hunt, as well as a young Jim Carrey amongst the supporting cast. But again, from 1986, Kathleen Turner, Nicolas Cage, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, released by TriStar Pictures. Here is Peggy Sue Got Married. So Peggy Sue Got Married. This is just a wonderful performance piece, at least by Kathleen Turner. The only one I thought that was over the top was Nicolas Cage. And Kathleen Turner has done this is one of her best performances in this film, because she has to play this character at literally at two different time periods. Now, we had seen this type of performance before in other films. It's kind of what they would call like the fish out of water situation. And so what happens is Peggy Sue is going through a divorce from her husband, played by Nicolas Cage, as well as she is going to celebrate her 25th high school reunion. And her daughter, played by Helen Hunt, convinces her to dress up in this certain shimmering dress, and of course she stands out like a sore thumb. And they have to name the king and queen of the reunion. And of course, in the meantime, she's told everybody, what's going on. Where's Charlie at? Where's your husband at? Doesn't think that he will show up. And she says, we're getting a divorce. This is going on, and da 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 da. And of course, you meet her friends as they're much older. Even the actress Catherine Hicks. You may know her from the first Child's Play movie, as well as the TV show Seventh Heaven. She played the mom in Seventh Heaven. Well, she's in this as well. And of course, Peggy Sue is named as the queen of the reunion. And while she's on stage, she becomes lightheaded and passes out. And then goes back in time to 1960, her senior year of high school, and relives that crucial moments in that year and the relationships, and she rediscovers why she fell in love with Charlie, Nicolas Cage, in the first place. And it also, the film kind of answers questions, because we've all had this question in life. If you could if you had just taken the left road instead of taking the right, you know, where would you be? And so, and she finds out when she starts to go down that left road path, there's a reason why it didn't work out. You know, because she admits earlier on at the beginning of the film when she's in present day that she had such a crush on this one guy. But then when she goes back in time and starts to develop a relationship with him, she finds out that he's into some bizarre stuff, and that like he's into it's one thing that he's a poet, which is not crazy. It's a little strange, but for the time, but what makes him crazy is that he's into polygamy. He's wanting to try that out with her, and so that's the deal breaker right there. She's not into that stuff. And it's definitely a story that it's been told in different iterations throughout the years, but I think this type of film has definitely stood out in terms of, you know, like I said, asking that question, if you had gone this way instead of that way. But it's a great performance movie. Nicolas Cage, I think, is a little over the top, but that's the character's personality. He's an over the top guy. He's this musician or wannabe musician who ends up selling TVs and VCRs in reality. So, but this is one I would encourage, you know, people this generation, go back and check this out, because it definitely shows what that generation was like, the boomers, and what they were like, and how they had their dreams and passions, what they really wanted to do with their life, but they also felt that way about marriage and family and things of that nature. That a lot of people these days, including myself, were like, maybe I don't see that in the near future. But I want to encourage people, check this out. I don't know where it's available at. I found my copy on DVD through Amazon, through a used retailer on Amazon. Yeah, poke around on the internet or check some thrift stores, because I'm pretty sure you'll probably find it on DVD. Unfortunately, the only version I know, if it's on DVD that's available, is the full screen version. I don't know why, but it's kind of a hidden gem that was made back in the 80s, and it definitely is a great performance by Kathleen Turner. Comedic, heartbreaking at moments, and of course it does have a little bit of a fantasy element to it. So yeah, Peggy Sue got married. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to do one more for this particular video, then we're going to move on to something else, because I think I got something else that's quite good and planned for what to do next. So for this time, in this segment, I thought, you know, Kathleen Turner did such a good performance. I don't recall if she won anything or anything. I know she was really critically praised for Peggy Sue Got Married, our previous feature. But this one did actually garner some awards for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. And it, of course, is telling a true story about Helen Keller. And it's a true story of Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan, portrayed here by Patty Duke and Anne Bancroft. What am I talking about? From 1962, directed by Arthur Penn, it is The Miracle Worker. Yeah, originally released by United Artists in 1962, based on William Gibson's stage play. So we're going to take a look at this one. I do have some comments about this one. So let's roll it. The Miracle Worker. So that was The Miracle Worker from 1962, starring Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke in the roles of Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller. Now, what's interesting about this is that Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke basically got these roles because they had played those parts for a few years on stage. And what's interesting is that it was essentially lifted right from the stage, and that they just took. And of course, it had been portrayed before by other actors. As a matter of fact, Arthur Penn, who directed the film, also directed a television version back in the 50s, and that was a common thing. Playhouse 80, I think, is what it was called. I forget exactly what it was, but it was. But the network TVs they had, like, they would take like stage productions and do a television production of them at little to no cost. But then Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke performed Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller on stage. And the interesting thing was, when they went to cast the film, the director said there's no other choice. It has to be Anne Bancroft, Patty Duke. But United Artists did not think that Patty Duke was fitting for the role of Helen Keller. They thought she was too old. And in a sense, it was. She was 12 at the time they filmed the movie, portraying Helen Keller at the age of 7. But if you saw the film with us, the performance it's heartbreaking. And this is, of course, based on a true story of two real people. If it wasn't for Annie Sullivan, Helen Keller wouldn't have been able to do what she did. This was a woman who was blind and deaf. And yet she had to find her way in order to communicate and learn how to function. It's a heartbreaking story, but it's such a powerful story that despite all those circumstances, they were able to break through the blindness and break through the deafness as well as the mute. And they were able to communicate by sign language, where she had to learn how to sign. It's definitely it was a heartbreaking situation, but Helen Keller lived just a few years after the film was released, and so her story was told. And we're here in this age of biopics. Well, here's another great one to check out, The Miracle Worker. I first saw this movie in high school when I was a freshman in high school, and it was also around the same time I first saw To Kill a Mockingbird, because we were reading plays and screenplays that were adapted into feature films. Now, I think it's important to read the books that they were based on, and this is what kind of the shortcomings of the public school system is, that instead of reading the actual novelization of the story, you would get a published form of a screenplay or a play that you would read in the classroom, and that's not quite the same, because when I read To Kill a Mockingbird when I was in 8th grade as a class, but we read the actual book. And then when went into freshman, we reread it, but we did not read Harper Lee's adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird. We read Horton Foote adaptation of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Horton Foote was the guy who wrote the screenplay for the film. And of course, William Gibson wrote the original play to The Miracle Worker, so we read the published form of the Miracle Worker, basically the screenplay that these actors used to perform in the film. But it's such a well-made film, and you feel for Annie Sullivan, because there's that point. There's points in the film where she feels that, I've completely failed. But then she also realizes that if she doesn't stick with it, the family, the father especially, will become, and the whole family will become enablers, and they'll give in to her disability. They won't teach her really anything. She'll go back to throwing temper tantrums and throwing stuff around, instead of actually learning that, when you sit at the dinner table, you don't grab your food by your hand and like this. You have to eat with a spoon and a fork. So, yeah, that's what I had to share about The Miracle Worker. I thought this was kind of a rare find for me when I found this DVD. I found it in one of our grocery stores here in town for like $5, and so I thought, I seen this, I go, oh, this is a good movie, and I thought, I'll pull this out and buy it. And because I remember watching it in high school, and I hadn't seen it since. And then it's a wonderful film. It's been adapted several times for stage, and I think there was even a more recent film adaptation, maybe for television or something. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, if you can find this version from the MGM DVDs, pick it up and check it out for yourself. So that's going to do it for this video. We're going to wrap it up. The next one I'm going to be working on, I'm thinking about doing something pretty special themed, because definitely I think I'm going to get into summer movie camp. So, but there's going to be a specific direction to go with the summer movie camp, and I may mix in a few things here or there, but it's definitely going to be a certain theme with this year's summer movie camp. So, from me to you, see you later.